and masters in hadith, who has, for the time that he has graduated and even before so, has been making a tremendous strides and effort in trying to revive the knowledge of, the love of, and the study of hadith. And alhamdulillah, he has honored us to come and share with us with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed him with. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us attentive and to benefit from what he has to share with us, inshaAllah. Barakallahu feekum, fatafaddal mashkuran ma'jura.
We use this too, right? Or just this one? Okay, fine. Jazakallah khair. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه كما يحب ربنا سبحانه وتعالى ويرضاه واشهد ان لا اله الا الله وحده لا شريك له واشهد ان محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وعلى ال محمد كما صليت على ابراهيم وعلى ال ابراهيم انك حميد مجيد وبارك على محمد وعلى ال محمد كما باركت على ابراهيم وعلى ال ابراهيم في العالمين انك حميد مجيد. ما بعد. السلام عليكم ورحمه الله تعالى وبركاته. Thank you very much, Akhi Sheikh, my brother and elder, my friend, brother in Islam, Sheikh Ilyas. Alhamdulillah, we have many good memories from the city of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and some of those memories that we consider now to be good, obviously back then weren't what necessarily that fun. But now looking back in hindsight, we say alhamdulillah, right? In the trenches, in Medina, literally. Well, alhamdulillah for that. It's good to be back in Minnesota, good to be back in Minneapolis, and great to be back here in Masjid Tawfiq. I think the first and last time I came was for khutbah, for Jumu'ah. My friend and host, Sheikh Saeed, he asked me, he said, Sheikh, would you mind coming to this masjid? You just did the khutbah, but they have a second khutbah, they have a TV service, so on and so forth. Would you mind coming through? I said, sure. So alhamdulillah, we came, we did the khutbah, and we left. And this was last August, if I'm not mistaken. So alhamdulillah, it's good to be back. Walillahi alhamd. And by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, during this trip we'll fulfill our destiny and take care of what we set out to take care of by His permission. So with regards to gratefulness, then to be quite honest with you all, I think that the topic is scary. It's a scary topic. And the reason why it's scary is because we look at so many different blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we have. So many gifts, day in and day out. Allah gives us so much. And when we seriously sit down and reflect on how much we've thanked Him, and forget about thanking, but acknowledging. Do we even acknowledge Allah's blessings? There are those who fail to acknowledge Allah's blessings because of rejection. Al-juhud, just rejecting it. It didn't come from Allah, it didn't come from God, it came from myself. My money, my efforts, my talents, my race, my gender, my hard work, etc., etc., etc. Waliyadu billah. So if a person is flat out rejecting that the gift and the blessing came from Allah, then of course it's impossible for him to acknowledge that it came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's class number one. Class number two are those who know that all things come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all good comes from Allah. However, we forget because things are so habitual. Things are so routine. The last time you sat down and thought about those who don't have what you have, those who are struggling, starving, dying, they don't have the simple things that you take for granted. Brushing your teeth, using your thumbs, going to the bathroom, being able to eat and drink and sleep, going to school, so on and so on and so forth. But we know it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as believers, as Muslims, but because those blessings are so abundant, because those blessings are so routine, we fail to acknowledge them each and every single time. And that's a problem. And last but not least, the third class of people when it comes to Allah's blessings are those who believe is that the blessings and the gifts and the types of success are from Allah in general. In general. But the specifics, the hands-on, the practical things, I did. I gave. I worked. Allah gave me the job. Allah allowed me to work, but I'm out here working hard. This is my money. This is my car. This is my stuff. This is my house. And obviously that is a problem with regards to fully acknowledging that each and every single blessing, small and big, is from Allah and Allah only. And talk is cheap. And this is one of the reasons why I consider this topic to be scary. I can't free myself from this. We all unfortunately fall into one of these three categories. Hopefully no one in the masjid tonight, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, is falling under the first category. Hopefully not. Well, for sure, there are many of us, if not most of us, who fail to acknowledge Allah's blessings as they deserve to be acknowledged. And for us to realize, for Allah, the Mighty and the Most High, to teach us about His blessings, which He does in the Quran, He shows us in the world, He shows us in our own selves, our fingertips, our fingernails. These are ayat from Allah, these are signs, these are blessings from Allah Azza wa Jal. The believer, to acknowledge them and to thank Allah for them, is now another blessing of Allah, the Mighty and the Most High. So when you're trying to pay back the debt that Allah lent you or gave you, you find yourself in what? More debt. Similar to a banking system. In order to do away with the financial and economic problems, we'll print more dollar bills. And by printing more dollar bills, it just makes higher inflation. And you pay off one thing with one card, and a second and a third and a fourth. You cover this with that, you cover this with that, with more and more fake money. And at the end of the day, you realize that you're just deeper and deeper and deeper into what? Into debt. Paying this leads to another debt. Getting out of this debt leads to what? Another debt. This indulgence is paid with this, and that is paid leading to another indulgence. So the modern system in reality is a ball and a chain. In reality, you're always in debt. And you look at some of the Islamic rulings with regards to making Hajj, making Umrah, going out fighting in Allah's cause, seeking knowledge. Can you do that if you have a debt? Well, in 2022, everybody is in a perpetual state of debt, for real, because their bills come in. So in reality, you say you can't make Hajj until you pay off your electric bill. You're in the middle of a cycle, right? It's not like how it was back in the day, in which a person could live debt-free. But the moment the electricity, the gas, the moment the internet is on, you're in a state of what? For real, debt is continuing. And paying off one debt, in most cases, leads to another debt. So think about that concept. How you can't escape debt. Think about how Allah is showing you one of His blessings. That is a blessing. And if that's a blessing, then that deserves and that needs another what? More shukr, more thankfulness, more gratefulness. So the servant can never ever do without Allah, the Mighty and the Most High. Period. It's never a time in which you've paid off your debts to Allah. Impossible. And this is all included in Allah Azza wa Jalla's statement, وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. If you tried to count Allah's blessings, if you attempted, لَا تُحْصُوهَا, you couldn't. And then Allah tells us about most of the people, except for the few chosen servants, Allah calls them that He's dhalum. He's oppressive, He's ignorant, and He is kafar. He's ungrateful. Most people, they don't even try. They don't even think about acknowledging Allah's blessings and Allah's gifts. So this is very scary, right? Especially when we talk about the younger generations, the things that they have, how our kids whine and cry over things that we looked at as being luxuries. A luxury to have is now standard for your son. Think about that. Something wrong with the tablet, something wrong with the Wi-Fi. They don't get their food, their drink, their snacks, their toys immediately, instantly. You're a bad parent. This place is boring, it's corny, something's wrong. But when we were growing up, when we were younger, to have this toy, to have this food, to go out, that was a what? That was a luxury for someone to take you out, for you to get things. But now, this phone is old. This tablet is slow. But think about when the first iPhone came out. When the first tablet came out. Think about when you first discovered the internet. Think about when you first discovered, what was it, back in the day, 3G, 4G, how many Gs they have now. Think about that now. Think about videos. Young people watch videos on YouTube. They say, what was this recorded with a potato? It's old and choppy. 1080, 4K is what? It's old. But back when we were younger, man, TV, right? It wasn't no flat screen. Was no plasma, was none of that stuff. And these are basic standard things that the younger generation, if they don't have, then it's automatically corny and whack, and I want to go home. Take me out of this place. I'm not watching this. How can you watch this? So just look at each and every level and generation. It becomes scarier and scarier. The deserving mentality, the instant gratification, the feeling that I'm entitled and I'm the cause of it is stronger and stronger. And the acknowledgement that Allah is the one who gives, Al-Wahhab, He endows, He hands the gift, every single gift. It becomes weaker and weaker and weaker. So it's very scary for yourself, let alone for your children. And you say to yourself, Allah knows what's going to take place in the second, third, fourth generation. How people are going to walk around entitled and forgetful and ungrateful and not having any consciousness that Allah Azza wa Jal is the one who gave the gift. May Allah help us all. So with that being said, Bismillah Ta'ala, I'm going to read from one of my favorite books of one of my favorite authors. And he's none other than Al-Hafidh ibn Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala. He says in Madarij al-Salikin, and inshallah we're reading from the Tahdhib Madarij al-Salikin. He says, منزلة الشكر وهي من أعلى المنازل وهي فوق منزلة الرضا وزيادة فالرضا مندرج في الشكر إذ يستحيل وجود الشكر بدونه وهو نصف الإيمان كما تقدم والإيمان نصفان نصف شكر ونصف صبر وقد أمر الله به ونهى عن ضده وأثنى على أهله ووصف به خواص خلقه وجعله غاية خلقه وأمره ووعد أهله بأحسن جزائه وجعله سببا للمزيد من فضله وحارسا وحافظا لنعمته وأخبر أن أهله هم المنتفعون بآياته واشتق لهم اسما من أسمائه فإنه سبحانه هو الشكور وهو موصل الشاكر إلى مشكوره بل يعيد الشاكر مشكورا وغاية رضا الرب من عبده قال الله تعالى واشكروا نعمة الله إن كنتم إياه تعبدون وقال عن خليله إبراهيم صلى الله عليه وسلم إن إبراهيم كان أمة قانتا لله حنيفا ولم يكن من المشركين شاكرا لأنعمه وقال وإذ تأذن ربكم لئن شكرتم لأزيدنكم ولئن كفرتم إن عذابي لشديد وقال إن في ذلك لآيات لكل صبار شكور وقلة أهله في العالمين تدل على أنهم هم خواصه كقوله تعالى وقليل من عبادي الشكور وفي الصحيحين عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قام حتى تورمت قدماه فقيل له تفعل هذا وقد غفر الله لك ما تقدم من ذنبك وما تأخر قال أفلا أكون عبدا شكورا وقال لمعاذ يا معاذ إني لا أحبك فلا تنسى أن تقول في الدبر كل صلاة اللهم أعني على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك وأصل الشكر في وضع اللسان ظهور أثر الغذاء في أبدان الحيوان ظهورا بينا يقال شكرت الدابة تشكر شكرا على وزن سمنت تسمن سمنا إذا ظهر عليها أثر العلف ودابة شكور إذا ظهر عليها من السمن فوق ما تأكل وتعطى من العلف وكذلك حقيقته في العبودية وهو ظهور أثر نعمة الله على لسان عبده ثناء واعترافا وعلى قلبه شهودا ومحبة وعلى جوارحه انقيادا وطاعة. Ibn Qayyim, may Allah have mercy on him, he talks about the different levels and the different stations the levels and the stations, or you can even say chambers, manazil, the levels and the stations, all included in the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. There was a scholar who came before Ibn al-Qayyim, who Ibn al-Qayyim calls Shaykh al-Islam. And he's not talking about Ibn Taymiyyah, who was Shaykh al-Islam and his teacher, but he's talking about Abu Dharr al-Harawi, rahimahullah ta'ala. And he wrote a book, and Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah, came along and explained that book in Madarij al-Salikin, fi manazili iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. So here in the summarized version, he mentions a level or station or a chamber called Ar-Rida. Ar-Rida, the servant being pleased with Allah and Allah's decree and Allah's sharia and Allah's laws and Allah's rules and Allah's way, Allah's sunnah. And after that level, he talks about the next level, which is the level of thankfulness, gratefulness. And he says, and these two levels are intertwined. They're inseparable. But the equation isn't equal. Thankfulness and gratefulness, he says, is dominant, is bigger, it's greater. So a person cannot have rida, radiallahu anhum wa radwan. Allah is peace with them and they're with him. The servant cannot reach that level unless he has thankfulness. You can't be pleased with Allah truly unless you thank Allah. Once you have obtained the gratefulness and the thankfulness to Allah, then you're a step closer to Rida. Then the author Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, he explains is that thankfulness and gratefulness is half of one's faith. Think about that percentage now. A fourth of a thing is a lot. If you took a thing, you cut it to 4 pieces, that's a lot. 1/4 is what? It's a lot. A sixth of a thing is a lot. An eighth of a thing is a lot. But to take something and do what? Split it right down the middle. And in 2 chunks, 2 pieces, that's even what? Even more. So a half of your iman, of your faith, is shukr, thankfulness and gratefulness. And he says, the other half, of course, is patience. Now let's talk about why gratefulness, why thankfulness is so important, so virtuous, so special. He says, number 1, it's half faith. Number 2, Allah, he says, وَقَدْ أَمَرَ اللَّهُ بِهِ. Allah has commanded his servants with gratefulness. So it's not a choice to be thankful, nor is it a favor that you're doing Allah by being thankful, as many of us think. You think it's a favor that we're doing Allah. Rather, it's our duty and our obligation to be thankful, but from Allah's beauty and from Allah's endless compassion, his gratefulness, his magnificence, is that he rewards us for doing our job. He gives us blessings for doing what we were made and created to do. So think about that now. You're not doing anything other than what you're supposed to do. And your job, your worship to Allah, your thankfulness and your gratefulness at best is limited, at best. Flawed, at best. Let alone when you just half the time don't even care. Half the time you're not even being fully sincere. Half the time you're not putting your all in it. But when you're focused and concentrated and your heart is soft and tender and you're trying to give Allah what he deserves, you cannot give Allah what he truly deserves. It's impossible. He gave you too much. And yet and still Allah Azza wa Jal, he thanks you for the deed. Inshallah, he will accept the deed and he blesses you and he gives you so many more blessings from that one deed. But that was something that Allah, he said, وَقَدْ أَمَرَ اللَّهُ بِهِ. Allah commanded the people to show thankfulness. After that, number 3, وَنَهَا عَنْ ضِدِّهِ. Allah has forbidden the opposite of gratefulness, which is ungratefulness. Allah has forbidden you from being an ingrate and for you forgetting about him and how he saved you and delivered you and how you called out to him and he gave you what you needed and you turn right back to disobeying him. And that's why it's scary. And Allah has forbade his servants from becoming conceited and thinking that they are the cause behind the good that they have in this world, which is the state, unfortunately, of most of Allah's beings. Most people today, they think that they're the cause behind what they have. And if they do acknowledge God, if they do thank God, then their thinking of God is limited, it's partial, it's warped, and it's twisted. People say in God we trust, right? They put that on a dollar bill or on coins. In God we trust. But how many people buying, spending, saving, doing, wasting money, how many people actually trust God? Let alone And think about Arabic and English. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. In God we trust, not we trust God. In God we trust. In Arabic, that's taqdeem and ta'khir. It's balagha even in English, right? فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْهَرْ. All right, when you study the eloquence of the Quran, you know that certain things should come after other words, but they come before. You feed al-hasr to show you there's only for Allah. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ. Only. So this says, in God we trust, not we trust God. In God we trust. But how many people actually trust God? How many people think about God when it comes to money? How many people violate the laws of God when it comes to earning, spending, saving, stealing, taking money? So most people are ungrateful. And Allah, He has forbidden His servants from being ungrateful. وَأَثْنَى عَلَىٰ أَهْلِهِ. Furthermore, Allah has praised and lauded. He spoke highly of those who are shakirin, those who are thankful and those who are grateful. وَوَصَفَ بِهِ خَوَاصَ خَلْقِهِ. And the best of Allah's servants, Allah gave them the title of shukr. He spoke about the prophets, the messengers, the salihin, the shuhada. He called them grateful. وَجَعَلَهُ غَايَةَ خَلْقِهِ وَأَمْرِهِ. And the greatest aim and the highest objective of Allah's creation and Allah's command is thankfulness. The heavens and the earth, the greatest purpose of the heavens and earth being made and brought into existence was for the people to show thankfulness. The highest aim of the halal, of the haram, of the commands of Quran and Sunnah, of the Salah, of the Hajj, of fasting, of Ramadan, of I'tikaf. The highest aim is what? Is for them to show thankfulness. Ibn al-Qayyim, he says, وَوَعَدَ أَهْلَهُ بِأَحْسَنِ جَزَائِهِ. And He has promised the people who are thankful the best of rewards. Not rewards, good rewards, but the best of what they used to do. وَجَعَلَهُ سَبَبًا لِلْمَزِيدِ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. And Allah has caused thankfulness to be a reason behind getting more blessings. And a reason behind those blessings being preserved. It's easy to make money, but it's hard to what? Keep it. That's a fact. It's easy to go to the playoffs. Easy to win the chip. It's easy to win the championship. Relatively easy. But let's see you go next year. Not win next year, but what? Let's see you go back. How many teams? Our youth, they love basketball. Unfortunately, our youth, in reality, if you want to be frank, they worship basketball. Being openly. They worship sports. They worship basketball players. They hero worship them on one level or another. How many people go to the finals and they win? But what about next season? Right or wrong? Is this not the case? Not winning next year, but what? Going back to the playoffs. How many teams have horrible record, horrible season, injury, whatever the case may be, let alone go back to the playoffs, go back to the finals, let alone win it what? Twice. That's an extremely difficult feat. Let alone what? 3 times. And now we have a dynasty. You know what that word means? Within 5 years, 6 years, we won a chip what? 4 times, 3 times. We were in and out of the finals, in and out of the Super Bowl within the last 5, 6, 10 years. That's a dynasty. That's extremely difficult. So one of the ways of preserving what you have is thankfulness. Because it's easy to get something, but it's harder to what? Keep it, let alone to build on that thing and to consolidate. That's the example, the analogy I'm making with sports. It's easy to have a good season, 2 good seasons, 3 good seasons, 3 championships years. It's not so easy. And what is one of the reasons? What are one of the reasons why this doesn't take place? Because people, they fail to keep the key ingredients that took them there in the first place. and that was chemistry. That were people taking lower salaries. That was the coach being one with the players being one with the what? With the coach. That was the sacrifice. That was doing away with egos, keeping away the trading, etc., keeping the nucleus of the team. That sabab, the next season, the third season was what? It was lost. So therefore, the blessing was also what? Taken away. So when you're thankful to Allah, He says, number one, it is a reason behind you getting more. And number two, He says, وَحَارِسًا وَحَافِظًا, is a guard from those blessings being taken away. Why don't I have what I used to have? Whatever that thing may be, my health isn't the same as it used to be. My good looks, I forgot so much. Ilm, waliyadu billah. I memorized the whole Quran. I can't even recite anything now. The happiness in my family, my marital harmony. My children don't love me. They don't respect me anymore. The fruit doesn't taste the same as it used to taste. Right? How many older people say this, right? Food isn't the same here in America. It isn't as sweet as it used to be back home. Well, maybe it's not the country in which you're in, but maybe it's because you're ungrateful and you forgot about Allah's blessings, and some of those ni'mas were what? Taken away from you. وَأَخْبَرَ أَنَّ أَهْلُهُمُ الْمُنْتَفِعُونَ بِآيَاتِهِ. Furthermore, He says, Allah has informed us and Allah has told us is that the only people who truly benefit from Allah's ayat are the thankful. Ingrates, they don't benefit from the Quran. It comes and it goes. In one ear, out the other. Our parents would tell us when we were younger. Our grandparents, one ear, out the other. But the ungrateful people, it doesn't even go in one ear. And that's why Allah Azza wa Jalla told us about the people of Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam, is that whenever I spoke to them, they not closed their ears. And it's also from the Balagha, Ja'alu, what did they do? They stuck their fingers, what? In their ears. Listen to this now. That's one thing, I'm trying to hear what you guys say. Whatever. Verse is what? It doesn't say wada'u. It says what? Ja'alu, and then it says fi. They jammed their eardrums with their fingertips because they didn't want to hear anything. So the only people who benefit from Allah's ayat are those who are thankful. Ungrateful people, forgetful people, they don't benefit from the Quran. It's not going to make sense to them. It's not going to be clear to them. It's not going to taste sweet to them. وَاشْتَقَّ لَهُمْ اسْمًا مِنْ أَسْمَائِهِ. And Allah Azza wa Jal, He gave them names and titles that are derived from one of His names. And that is because Allah Azza wa Jal is Ash-Shakur. Allah Azza wa Jal, He described Himself as being Shakir. And He called His servants the Shakirin. Moving forward, Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala afterwards, he quotes several Quranic ayat and several ahadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam with regards to the points that he just mentioned. The command for thankfulness, the reward for thankfulness, the names and the titles, the prophets and the messengers. Thankfulness is a means of your deeds being preserved and protected, etc., etc., etc. The last thing that I will mention, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, before we run out of time, and this is very, 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 very interesting, is what the word shukr, let alone shakur or shakir, what does the word mean organically in the Arabic language? If there was a Christian from Jordan that you met, or a Yemenite Jew, or someone who's an atheist from Arabia, or an agnostic from Iraq, whatever the case may be. They had no religion, or the religion wasn't Islam, but they were learned, they were trained in the Arabic language. They knew Arabic better than some Muslims, unfortunately. Nothing to do with Islam, but just Lugha al-Arabiya. Okay, the original organic language. What is the word shakur mean? Shakara yashkuru shukran. What does he understand from that word in that title? Listen to what he says. He says, is in the Arabic language, a shukr it basically means fat. He says, dhuhuru athar al-ghidha. The nourishment, the eating, the drinking, the animal, the livestock, he says it becomes what? Samina, becomes fat. much more than what it ate and what it drank. It grazed in the pasture, the grass, whatever it was eating, whatever it was being fed, and it became healthy, and it became what? Fatter. And you can clearly see the fatness upon the animal. That's what the word shukr linguistically means. He says, ظهور أثر الغذاء في أبدان الحيوان ظهورا بينا. You go eat an adha to the slaughterhouse or to the farm. You have the skinny goats. You have this one. You have that one. You say, I want the what? I want that one. And he says, okay, but that's going to cost you what? These are 500. These are 400. These are 250. That one over there is going to what? It's going to cost you. And one of the reasons why it's going to cost you is because the animal is so what? It's so big and fat. It's healthy. It's been fed well. Inshallah, no hormones, no GMO, etc. But even with that shows you the bigger, the heavier, the more money. It's more pleasing to the eye. He says, so the fat, the nourishment, the nutrition of the animal is clear. Shakarat dabatu, and the animal, it shows shukr when it becomes what? Seminat. It becomes heavier and bigger and wider and broader. He says, وَكَذَلِكَ حَقِيقَتُهُ فِي الْعُبُودِيَّةِ. And the same original meaning pertains to worship and being thankful and being grateful to Allah. Allah blesses you. Allah gives you so many gifts and bounties and blessings, and the effects, the traces, the impact of your thankfulness is now what? Seen. And your spirit, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, becomes what? Nothing, not bigger. It's not the word we used. We used one word. What was that word? Fat. And you understand this? You become fatter and bigger. Your heart is in more and more and more acknowledgement of Allah's blessings. You're in debt to Allah more and more. And in most cases, supposedly, you're now closer to Allah, the Mighty and the Most High. Because the animal is going to be obedient and subservient and affectionate to the one that feeds it the most. And if you don't believe that, then go buy a pet. It's a fact. Go buy a pet. A dog. People in this country and around the world obsessed with dogs. Cats. People love cats. How does the cat behave with the one that feeds it? Most often. Not dry cat food, but fresh, wet cat food. As soon as you open up the can, the cat is dancing, purring, is close to you. It acknowledges my food and my drink comes from who? My owner. That's a fact. And it's going to be more and more and more affectionate with its owner the fatter you make the cat. So this is the linguistic meaning of what? Shukr. It's for something to swell, to swell, to swell, to swell because it's being fed so well. And that is the similitude, and that is the analogy, and that is the linguistic versus the Islamic technical definition of shukr. Is the more Allah gives me, the more in debt I am to Him, and the more it should be seen and shown in the following points. Number one, he says, وَهُوَ ظُهُورُ أَثَرِ نِعْمَةِ اللَّهِ عَلَى لِسَانِ عَبْدِهِ ثَنَاءً وَاعْتِرَافًا. Praising Allah, alhamdulillah, ash-shukr wa'tirafan, and acknowledging, and in the heart, let alone the arms, the bones, the feet, the tongue, the eyes, and submissiveness to Allah, the Mighty and the Most High. We'll stop here tonight. May Allah Azza wa Jalla make us thankful. Wa jazakum Allah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.